Kia ora tātou, it's Bon here. I thought I would take the time to do my first video in a series of videos, just coming to talk about the Wairua Intuitive Guidance Cards. And I first thought, I thought that I'd start off with talking about how the actual cards came to be. And I know that I've written about this and I've shared the story in this page before and other pages that I've had before over the years. And just amongst all those that have been with and around me in this kohatu journey, and having shared the story with them. But I wanted to create this video and create more just to really get an insight into them and get an insight into cards themselves, and also myself as Māori, producing something like this and taking away some of the stigma that can be attached to items like this, because there is a lot of stigma out there. And so so today I'm just going to start off with how they came to be. So the cards themselves, most people who follow me do know that the cards themselves, originally all of the designs and the kōrero originate from a set of stones that I've painted. This particular set I painted back in 2014, but the journey for me with these stones, or kohatu as they're known as, go back a lot longer than that. So I've just got the kohatu down in front of me, and I'm going to turn the camera around and just give you a bit of a look, just to show you. Of course, I've got them in a bit of a triangle. So yeah, here they are. And this is where the cards have come from. So I'm just going to turn you back around again. And they were originally called the Te Ao Kohatu Maori stones. Te Ao Kohatu being the Stone Age, and Maori being the life force energy. So back around. I'm just going to stick the camera up there so I can just sit back and record it all. Actually, I'll bring it closer to me. So yeah, that was the original inspiration for the cards. And so I'm going to go back to the beginning of this journey. And it started out when I was finishing up a diploma in social work and community work practice in Gisborne at Tairāwhiti Polytech. And there's a beautiful friend of mine, and I need to mention names. I really want to honour the people that have been part of this journey with me. One of my beautiful friends and student colleagues was Kay Symes, and she used to paint kohatu much like this. They were very bright in different colours, and same thing, Māori designs on them, and I just love them. I really love them. And we were at the end of our year of study in 2000, our second year of study. She painted a few sets as gifts for some tutors of ours, and yeah, they were really, really beautiful. At the same time, I had her paint a set for myself that I gifted on to an organisation that I had done my placement with as well. And so I guess for me, that was really the start of where my own journey with the kohatu that I came to paint started. And I really do credit her with, I guess, the inspiration behind it all. And when I went out to mahi, I got my first job in youth work for Te Runanga o Tūranga Nui Ākiwa. And it was then at that time in that year, again, I began to paint these kohatu. They were red, black, and white. I was always drawn to those colours and that colour scheme, and so they've always been these colours, and yeah, all these designs just came, and so I started to paint them in sets of about 7, and people wanted to purchase them, and I also gifted them on to people as well. And yeah, I really loved that, and so that's when they first really came into my life. And I've worked in a lot. I worked in a lot of organisations, a lot of Māori organisations, iwi education back home in New Zealand, and by 2004, I was working. I went to work for Turunanga Ngāti Porou, and one of my role at that time, this is the second time in those 4 years that I had gone to work for Ngāti Porou, I was developing and delivering a program, and that particular program was called Whakamana i te Tangata, which was a self-empowerment program, and it was working with victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse. And so I had the honour of taking a group of participants on a journey into themselves, and it was a really beautiful journey that I loved. And so what I'd done and how I'd created the program was that every week we would actually brought the kohatu into the program, and so every week we would look at something different. So one week we might focus on whakapapa and connection. The next week we might focus on aroha, being love, and really weaving that through the wānangas that we had together. And I still have it, and just all the work that we did in that particular program, and the work that the ladies had created for themselves during my time there, and I still have a copy, and this is it here. And I'll just show you for when we looked at whakapapa, for instance. So these are all the same designs that came, that that is still running and flowing, have come through to the cards. It was a really beautiful journey with those women, and at the end of every session that we would have, I would have painted a few of the kohatu, and then they would have all got one of these at the end of our day. And so by the time we wrapped up the program, they had this little kete, or this basket of kohatu, and they just loved them. I saw a lot of, there were a lot of tears that came through just in the kaupapa itself and what we shared through that time. And it was a real honour for me to be a part of their lives in that moment in time. So yeah, that was just a short-term contract that I went and done for the Runanga. I had actually approached them and said, I've got a program, I want to deliver it, and will you have me back a second time round? And so they did, and I was really grateful for that opportunity. And so yeah, these have been part of my life for 21 years now. Yeah, and in the time of that, when I'd done that particular program, I came to befriend a woman who became very special to me, and she was in her 70s at the time. A lot of my friends were older. I didn't kind of always meld with and get along. Well, not that I didn't get along with people my own age. I just wasn't drawn to. I was drawn to being around wahine, not just wahine, but people who were much older than me, and I just loved to be with them and listen to them and listen to the kōrero that they would share and be a part of that. So yeah, and this particular woman is who I have dedicated the cards to, along with my husband and my children. And her name is Kate. We used to call her Nanny Kate, but Kate'a Hikawai Haggerty. And so this journey is as much about her, really, and that's why I wanted to come back to the start of it all. And so that was in 2004. Come 2006, I was then working for Te Wānanga o Aotearoa, and I was lecturing a diploma in social work practice at that time. And part of that, and part of my own studies and upskilling, they were, Te Wānanga were putting me through my Bachelor of Bicultural Social Work Practice. And so I was in study 2006, and I had to travel from, most of the time it was travel from to attend the wānanga for the papers. There was one, we were able to study away, like off campus, but I think for every paper we needed to be on campus to more around our assessment and delivering a presentation. And so I needed to do a presentation with another beautiful friend of mine who has also been a pivotal part in my journey, and her name is Aroha Te Hau. Is currently in Waitangi at the moment. And so we would travel from Gisborne to Auckland, and together we had put together a presentation to deliver at the Manukau campus, and I can't remember what the paper was actually on. It may have been Worldviews, Significance and Consequence. And so I had this idea that I wanted to use the kōhatu, and I had painted this particular nanny and friend of mine, Nanny Kate, a full set of kōhatu. I think there was about 33 that I had painted for her, and I actually went and asked her if I could borrow them for the presentation, and she was really open to that, and said Kate Pai, take them. And so I did, and together Aroha and I went off to Manukau. We delivered our papers, and the presentation was just a really wonderful presentation. And part of that is that we went around to the crowd, and everyone they didn't know what they were picking out of the box, but the box was covered and they all got to pick a kōhatu each. And so everyone got one. And then part of that presentation was connecting in with those whānau as to what was it that they got, and what did they feel the message was for them that came for them. And it was just a really beautiful process to be a part of. And in that process, I just remember some of the participants just coming to tears with the kōhatu that they'd chosen, and the feeling that they'd got from it, and the messages that they had received, or the connections that they had made to that particular concept that had come up for them. And I was kind of really blown away by watching all of that. And at the end of the day, I couldn't ask for them back. And so I basically gifted them on, knowing that I could go home and paint Nanny Kate more, because that wasn't a problem for me, and I knew that I could get it done. So and that's where that was left off. And so I'd gone back to Gisborne and I'd let her know what happened. She's like, Kate Pai, that's all good. I know that you'll come through, and that you will paint them, and it's all good, girl. So I really just when I think about her. But so kind of going into 2006 and 2007, my life just was a bit of a haze at the time, and uh, there was just a lot of stuff going on, and I felt myself go into this, just sucked into this vortex and went into this downward spiral. It was kind of like my um, dark night of the soul, really, those years. And anyway, and in that space, I ended up um, buying me a one-way ticket to Australia, and that's what brought me here to this land. I think I look back at everything now and think just how perfect it all was. You know, what I perceived as being a real lowly time in my life was actually probably the most pivotal and enlightening time of my life to bring me here. And so um, yeah, so I ended up here. I never actually got to repaint the stones, and it wasn't too long, and maybe 1 or 2 years after that, that Nanny Kate had moved on to Rotorua to her whānau, and she eventually passed away. And so that was, I can't remember the year she passed away. It could have been 2009 possibly, but yeah, for me, when me coming away 2007, and so everything kind of just went on as it does. But 2010, I started walking the path of me, and opening myself to more. It's like, what is it? Who am I? What am I here for? All those questions you start to ask yourself when you do kind of go into this space. It's like, what is my purpose here in this world? And and so for me, it was very much stepping into that journey of Wairuatanga and spirituality, and um, just, yeah, being curious about so much. Um, and so that would have been from about 2010 onwards. 2014, after I'd had my two youngest, our two babies, which also were a very big catalyst in my path and the path that I'm walking now. So I gave birth to them in 2012, 2013, 2014, and I went through a lot having birthed them both, and my whole life had kind of, what I felt at the time, just kind of tipped on its head, because it's like I had this vision of where I wanted to be going, and next minute I've got these two babies who I never ever dreamed would appear. Actually, I have to go and take that back, reword that. I just, because we were told that the chance of us having any more children was pretty much nil. We never expected to have more, even though I dreamt that I would have two more children that were going to be boys. And but yeah, they arrived. But yeah, it really threw me out mentally. So yeah, I joined a spiritual development group just one night a week with a woman named Insha Rhea, and she was really beautiful. But in part of that journey, and I got rid of a lot of old journals of mine last year, but I went through them and I took out some pages out of the journals, and these particular pages here, when I was in that development circle, I had this. I started having these dreams, and part of these dreams was Nanny Kate started to come and visit me in my dreams, and and mainly what she came to say is that you need to paint my bloody stones, and come on, yeah, just hurry up and paint the bloody stones. And I was like, what the heck? And so, so I had this vision of that is what I needed to do, and all the kohatu came to me that I needed to share them with the world, share them with whoever, and to take people on a journey with them. And so I realized I had to listen. I searched around for the type of kohatu that I use, but I couldn't find any here. So we actually ended up sourcing these from Sponge Bay in Gisborne, where I always source them from. It's the same place. And my Tani had to go home to his grandmother's tangi, and I think in 2014. And I had asked him if he could go and harvest the kohatu for me. And so him and I can't remember if it was him and the boys or just him, but yeah, he did, and he brought them home for me to paint, and yeah, just so grateful. And that's when the set came. So in order for me to be able to share them with the world, I needed to think about ways that I could do that, and that's when the dreams came, that they needed to be cards, because they were easily portable, they're accessible, and that's where that's where it was all seeded from. And so it wasn't like how I said it was an 8-year journey. It wasn't like that I put a lot of effort into it through the years. Like, I think it took me 4 years alone just to get my A into G and paint the actual cards. It didn't take long for me to paint the kohatu, because those always came fluidly to me, but to transfer it onto card was a whole nother process. And then to begin writing the book, because I had long held this narrative, which is one that I realize is just kaka anyway, that I wasn't a writer. And so it took me a long time to mentally get myself to a point where I could start actually really putting pen to paper, and coming up with something that I was happy with, and also with doing something like this, being limited to a word count, and really wanting to put a message through in a minimal amount of words. So I've kept it as simple as possible in terms of the guidebook itself, and what is physically presented to the world. But there's so much more in and behind what was physically presenting, because there are other layers to these cards that will eventually form part of my workshops and my teachings, and the work that I'm focused on bringing out to the world, in terms of running workshops, whether they're online or whether they're in person, and just for anyone who's interested in using the cards themselves and really wanting to take things further and for either their own personal journey, or working with a whānau community, whatever. Oh, aroha mai. I'm just doing a lot of clearing at the moment. And in that, I'm probably at the end of this kōrero. So I'm going to upload it anyway, because it's like, just get the video done, whatever comes. And yeah, so that's how they came to be. For me, they've always been a tool that have you know, that I've really sort of made part of my life. And I'm looking forward to connecting with people in the future, because they'll be here in November, and just connecting with people over time and sharing in their journeys with them, for themselves, and the communities that they work within. So when I come back to another video, I'll focus on that in terms of the uses and healing aspects, just different ways of being able to utilize the cards. And then it's not, you know, people have this perception about things like guidance cards or oracle cards or anything like that, and it's like, oh, that's that woo-woo stuff, and it's you know, everything's perception, and they can be used for anything really, but they are a great educational tool. They're great for working with groups, whether it be whānau, whether it be community groups, whether it be in mental health settings, social work settings, because I've written the whole book in a language that's very inclusive and it's very heart-based. And so I know that, and because I've used them with groups, and every time there's just this sense of, you know, I've got it. Thank you. And just being in the space with people and watching everyone come together in the heart space is a very beautiful thing to watch. So yeah, I'm going to jump off now, love and leave you, and look forward to one day uploading the next video when I can get around to it. So I thank you for tuning in. Ka kite.